we'll cover it, Mark and I, like a blanket from beginning to end, everything that happened yesterday at AEW's All In at Wembley. I think roughly about 52,000 fans at that show last night. And Mark, it looked good. And I don't know about you, but I know that last year they had close to 80,000 fans or 80,000 fans for All In last year. I don't know, for some reason, yesterday's show seemed even bigger. The production was fantastic. Like, all in all, I thought a good and fun show for AEW last night, Mark.
Most definitely, Dave. I really thought that the arrangement and the alignment of the stadium was better. It looked really, really good. And I think you got that big show feel, which, you remember back in the days when Mike Tyson was fighting, it always seemed like the crowd was right up on you. And that's kind of the way that alignment looked.
Yeah, and I kind of like the fact that they didn't block off sections, so to speak. Like there was some empty seats, and that's fine. There's going to be empty seats. I just love the way that it looked. So no matter what camera angle that they had, it looked full. It looked great. Like I said, the production value was good. And all in all, some really good matches, Mark. And we're going to dissect each and every match from last night. But I think the best place to start is with the main event, Swerve Strickland and Bryan Danielson. That was one hell of a match in the main event last night, Mark.
Dave, I think I called you like 2 or 3 times during the show. And one of the times I called you, and I thought that Swerve had his best match. And he's had some really good matches. But I guess Danielson brought the best out in him. He looked so comfortable, and Danielson, we already knew he was a star. He's a Hall of Famer in every facet of the pro wrestling world. He's won at New Japan. He won at ROH. He won at WWE. Now he wins the championship at AEW, and there's only 3 or 4 people that have done that. He is a true world champion. He won in Japan. Like the guy's got every base covered now. Like, he is truly one of the greatest wrestlers of all time.
He's going to be on that list. There's no doubt about it. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer in every company that he worked for. Ring of Honor, he's on that Mount Rushmore. In the WWE, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And now in the short history of AEW, when they have those types of ceremonies, he's going to be one of the first names mentioned, Mark. There's no doubt about it. And he said, and I watched the media scrum afterwards, after All In, he said that last night was the greatest moment of his career. To have his family at ringside, to have his kids at ringside. Those other moments he had, he didn't have his life the way that it is right now. And he said that was the greatest moment of his career, the greatest match of his career. For somebody like Bryan Danielson to say and make that statement, that tells you how great that moment in that match was last night.
Well, I'm going to tell you, the highlight of the whole thing was not in the ring. The highlight was outside the ring when his son, Buddy, started doing like this.
Yep. Yes.
And I instantly thought, oh, my gosh, when that kid grows up and he's 20 years old and he comes into pro wrestling, because he is a pill, you hear me? He is a tough little kid that they have to tell, hey, buddy, you can't beat up everybody. Like, he is tough, Dave. And I can see him, and I smiled so big seeing him enjoying himself. And that's the feeling that you got from all the people that were in the front row and all the way up to the back of the stadium, that they were having a good time.
And I think that's the word to use. I know that fans don't like to hear it, but it's the reason why we fell in love with pro wrestling to begin with. It was fun. The show last night was fun. I had a great time watching that show from top to bottom. Listen, there's ebbs and flows. We're going to dissect every match. I want to get the nation's take on every match as well, Mark. But I think the word you just used really describe the whole event, and that it was fun. It's always great seeing that amount of people at a show like we saw last night. Everybody gave their effort, I felt, and I think it really showed. And it was definitely one of AEW's better shows. And honestly, Mark, it's hard not to bring up last night's show without bringing up the show from last year. I thought that this show was better than last year's, and it didn't have that dark cloud. We knew about the CM Punk situation almost from the start of the show. By the time CM Punk and Samoa Joe was finished, everybody knew about the altercation that happened in the back. It was everywhere. And I thought it put a dark cloud above the entire presentation and really put AEW in a slump for the next year. Obviously, Mark, not that same feeling coming off of last night.
No, I mean, there were people that got over in this pay-per-view that I felt like they is that who they are? Man, they should have did that long before. Matt Caster and Anthony Bowen, they wrestled like they never wrestled before. They had so much more energy than you normally see them. Like, I mean, man, if it takes for them to be in front of a big crowd like that to get the juice, then shit, put them in front of a crowd like that every night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure AEW would love to do that if they could, but
yeah.
But Mark, let me ask you, because you've been in that same situation. You've wrestled in the smallest of venues, but you've wrestled in front of 75, 80,000 fans. So when you're wrestling at a show like a WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year, this was AEW's biggest show of the year, and you're wrestling in front of a stadium full of people, like, how does that motivate you in a match like that?
Dave, I'm very externally motivated. Like, I don't like failure. I'm a horrible loser. And if somebody goes out and has a great match, then I feel that energy and I just keep it moving. Like, I want to up it. I don't want to be the low point. I don't want the ratings to take a dip. And I don't want the crowd participation to take a dip. So, like, I'm like doing the most when I feel that energy. So I think that some people are that way. We're all wired differently.
You know what? What you just said is interesting to me, and the fact that I wonder if the AEW locker room feels the same way, Mark, and the fact that, like, hey, they read the press. They know what people are saying. This last year has been a tough year for AEW. I wonder if that roster in that locker room had something to prove last night. Like, they're ready to turn a corner. I thought Dynamite this past Wednesday, and I said it on the show with Tommy, I thought last week's Dynamite was maybe the best Dynamite that we've seen in over 2 years. That's how
yes. That was my weekly winner on Saturday.
Yep. I listened to you and Denise. By the way, you and Denise on Saturday was awesome. That was maybe the best Saturday show I've heard in over 2 years. So great job by you and Denise on Saturday.
We had a good time.
I think AEW is tired of the bullshit and that they're ready to fight and they're ready to show how good this roster and this show is. And I really feel like they got into the ring on Sunday with something to prove.
And when you have something to prove, Dave, like, that's the biggest motivator of all, is making somebody eat crow. Walking into the room with your naysayers and your doubters and looking them in the face and going, what do you have to say now? I can't hear you. Speak up so everybody can hear it. I want to hear it. Come on, tell me how shitty I am. I want to hear it again. You don't hear none of that. Now, there's some people that shit the bed. And I'm sure that they're going to get talked about on this show today.
And I'm sure we're going to get some calls about it as well, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. They're not going to talk about how awesome we talked about people that deserved it. They're only going to pick up the negative. But it was not a perfect show. And there hardly ever is perfection in anything. But if we don't point out what was not stellar, then we're not doing our job.
All right, so, Mark, let me ask you. do we start with the great moments or do we start with the shit the bed moments? Which
we
moments?
start with the best.
All right.
We'll
we'll
start with the best. And we already did.
Yeah.
Like, just like Bryan Danielson and Swerve, I would go so far, Dave, as saying that was the top 5 greatest work rate match I ever saw.
Wow.
They never stopped moving. You go back and watch it, there was never a lull. They when they were in a hold, they didn't sit in the hole. It was like a rolling, working into something else. I don't know how conditioned they are, how long they can go, but it seemed like they could have went an hour very easily at that pace. And at that pace, going an hour would have been like really super, super impressive. But nonetheless, Dave, the time that they pulled, it was unbelievable. Like, I'd have tapped out about 15 minutes at that pace.
Yeah.
Like, man, them boys were rolling, man. I'm going to even go so far as to say that I called Swerve, and he answered. And it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And I said, hey, man, I just want to go on record as saying that you should be really proud of yourself. And he said, thanks, Mark. I said, no, don't gloss over this. I said, that was the best you ever worked. And the work rate might have been the best that I ever saw outside of Booker T, an African-American champion, do. And that's fucking
High
heavy praise.
That's high praise,
because
Mark.
The Rock and Booker T were the best workers. They could go, they were marathoners. Me and Ron Simmons, man, we weren't built for distance, Dave. We built for comfort and power. You know, the Kofi had an unbelievable run and was able to entertain and inspire like no other. The Bobby Lashley's and guys were tweeners, but Bobby worked the power style with a little bit of the thoroughbred style. Swerve and Booker were elite workers. They could go in and out, up and down, around the stadium, in the crowd, in the catering, back out to the ring. Like, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of conditioning and understanding of your body and your competitor, being able to carry his weight as much as you can carry your own. I was blown away. I was blown up. I was tired watching them. I was sweating, wiping sweat off my face. And that might have something to do with being 335 pounds. But I'm just saying.
No, but Mark,
Dave, what a fucking match.
It was a fantastic match, Mark. And I said this on Friday with Denise, and then I said it in the reaction podcast that's available on the Busted Open podcast that I recorded immediately after All In, Mark. And the fact that how good Swerve is. Swerve is a student of the game. And Swerve is somebody, for those who don't know, that he wrestled everywhere because he wanted to understand every style that there is. Here's a guy who's a great technical wrestler, but he can also wrestle the deathmatch style. He did that when he didn't have to. Usually names that big aren't going and doing deathmatch wrestling, but he wanted to do it because he wanted to be the master of every style that you could possibly have in this art form we call pro wrestling. He is underrated when you look about how good Swerve is in the ring. And I think he also proved how good he is on the microphone this past Wednesday on Dynamite.
Wow.
But think about the pressure, Mark, of somebody like Swerve, who's the champion, who's kind of carrying the company on his back in a lot of ways. He's in the main event in front of over 50,000 fans at Wembley, and he's going up against one of the best ever in Bryan Danielson. You know, Mark, he truly stepped up, and I'm glad that you called him. And by the way, Mark, when you call somebody, they should pick up no matter what time it is, because it's Mark Henry who's calling. But seriously, like, I think Swerve proved that he is on that list of elite when it comes to not just AEW, but in pro wrestling, no doubt
There
about it.
There was two shit the bed moments in the match, and that made me angry as a old school get off my lawn guy. There was a point early in the match when the cameraman got hit, and the cameraman went down, and his underwear got shown, all colorful underwear and colorful socks and shit. But that was in another match. But I'm talking about during the show. Like, I didn't like that.
Yeah, that was during Ospreay and MJF.
We'll
get into that in a second. We'll get into that in a second.
Okay,
but
well,
Mark,
we'll get to the shit to bed stuff later.
Yeah, but Mark, I don't even know if you call that a shit to bed moment, but I will say this. I was watching with a couple of friends. I was watching with my friend Dan and my friend Keith. And we were all like, has anybody ever done that? Like, match their underwear with their socks. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I've seen people match their shirt with their socks, their shoes with their socks, their pants with their socks. I don't think I've ever seen anybody match their underwear with their socks. Now, maybe I've been out of the game. Maybe I've been out of the game too long. Maybe, I'm married. I'm 53. That was just never a thing of matching your underwear with your socks. And also, if you're going to be a cameraman that's going to get knocked down, don't match your underwear with your socks, because the only thing people are going to be talking about is look at how that cameraman matched his underwear with his socks. We're tighty whities.
But it was purposefully done. He did that shit on purpose to draw attention
Fuck
to
that
himself.
guy. Fuck that guy.
Exactly.
It ain't about you. It ain't about you.
Preach.
Wear your tighty whities, yellow in the front, brown in the back. Wear that if you know you're going to get knocked down. Don't try to do like, I'm going to get knocked down, so I got to show everybody that I match my underwear with my socks. Fuck you, asshole. That's not about you. It's about the two men that are in the ring, Will Ospreay and MJF. Am I overanalyzing this, Mark? You brought it up. So
I did bring it up, and it pissed me off. That's why I brought it up. And I didn't want to segue out of Danielson and Swerve, but I was just as entertained with that match
oh my God, that match was great.
Until I got my fucking attention taken away, and I went like this. Oh, what the? Who is this? Why? And the referees, get your ass to the ropes. Stay at your face in between the wrestler and his opponent. I don't want to see you. In that moment, I'm emotionally invested in the struggle between the two combatants. I want to see both of their reaction and responses. If you are in the way or behind them with your face like this, I'm looking at you. Be like a Hebner. Be in force and be seen, but not in the way of the match. Like, if you want to be a star, go put some fucking tights on, get you some wrestling boots, and learn how to wrestle. Like, you got to know your role. I turned into Ron Simmons.
No, and
everybody think that's The Rock, but it was Ron that used to tell us, "Hey, know your role."
That's where he learned it from. That's where The Rock learned it from.
Yeah.
I picked up the phone and I called our good friend Jimmy Corderas because it actually bothered me. And I don't mean to sound like bully. Now I sound like Bully Ray. Like, I feel like the referee police. I feel like the referee police here. Like, all right, the cameraman's on the ground, the guy with the matching socks and the underwear. He's laid out. But after a while, Will Ospreay and MJF are back in the ring. Why are you with your head between the ropes checking on the cameraman? Who gives a shit? Ospreay and MJF are back in the ring. What are you doing? Who gives a shit about the camera? There's other people. There's other people that can worry about that. The two wrestlers are back in the ring. Turn around and referee the match. Why is your attention on the cameraman when the two wrestlers are back in the ring, Mark?
I don't know who came up with that, but they need to do a do-over. Remember the do-over when we was kids?
Do-over.
You're out playing, and then something fucks up. Hey, no, that's a do-over. Or I get another turn. Or when you play baseball, you say, I got his last at bat. I got his last bat. Like, that was what I felt. Oh, God, can we do a do-over? Can we pause it? Go change your underwear and socks. Come back. And then do the spot. And then the next thing you know, the referee don't look outside checking on the cameraman. That's what the doctor and the ring people are for. Focus on the ring.
Yeah,
that's what's important.
I don't need to see the Caboyage label on your underwear. I don't need to see the colors on the socks in the underwear matching. And again, when both wrestlers are in the ring, your attention should not be outside the ring on the cameraman because both wrestlers are back in the ring. So I know we kind of jumped off the great moment, but you brought that up because it is those little things that but also you don't want to. Here's the sin of it, Mark. You don't want to take away from a match like Ospreay and MJF because that match was so fucking good.
It was good.
They were so good. Ospreay and MJF were great.